Bon, OK. Hi, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde.
Bonjour, Madame Jolie. Laissez-moi juste faire une très courte introduction, puis on commence tout de suite après. Good morning and welcome to this press conference with Minister Jolie. We will take questions as soon as possible. As usual, one question, one follow-up. Bon matin à tous et bienvenue à cette conférence de la ministre Jolie. Nous allons prendre des questions suite à son allocution. Comme à l'habitude, une question et une question de suivi. Minister Jolie, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's a pleasure for me to have the chance to talk to you directly from the Paris Air Show, which we call the Bourget, of course, directly from Paris. And we know we're living in much more uncertain times in a dangerous world. We know that also when it comes to our own reality on the trade side and on the security side, we've been over-reliant on the US. And so therefore, we want to become closer to Europe, closer to our European partners and some key Asian partners as well. And so we are the most European of all non-European countries. That's why it was important to be here at the Paris Air Show, which is the most important forum for the aerospace sector at a time where there's so many decisions and investment made in the sector. We also announced last week, Prime Minister Carney announced $9 billion in defense investments before March 31st. $3.2 billion are also part of this $9 billion investments are for industrial procurement. And so we wanted to make sure that, well, that's the case, we're able to create good jobs in Canada. And so in that context, we were able to showcase that by not only showing an important partnership between Airbus and LOT, which is a Polish airline, but we wanted to make sure that, well, this announcement is made and clearly it shows that we are closer to Europe, that jobs could be created in Canada. And Airbus announced 40 new aircraft, plus an option of 44 aircrafts that would be built in Mirabel, Quebec. And so that's good news. Our Canadian ambassador to Poland has been heavily involved in making sure that this deal could happen. We've been working with the French and Polish governments on this issue, and we know that this is a net benefit to all three countries, Airbus being a French company, Poland being a shareholder in LOT Airlines, and at the same time, the A220 aircraft being built in Mirabel. So I've been meeting with more than a dozen of CEOs and businesses, and I've been sending the clear message to all CEOs. We're open for business, and now I'm open to take your questions. I'll say that very quickly in French. That way, our colleagues francophones are able to have access to the second official and most important official languages in my mind, which is French. Donc, on vit dans un monde beaucoup plus incertain, un monde beaucoup plus dangereux. Plus que jamais, on veut se rapprocher de l'Europe. On sait qu'on est trop dépendant des Américains. Nous sommes le pays le plus européen de tous les pays non européens. Et c'est pourquoi je suis à Paris présentement au Bourget, qui est la grande foire commerciale dans le secteur de l'aérospatial. Nous avons annoncé, le Premier ministre a annoncé la semaine dernière 9 milliards d'investissements en défense, 3,2 milliards de ce 9 milliards en approvisionnement en matière de défense. Alors, on arrive dans une situation où on peut être non seulement fier du travail que l'on fait, mais on est dans une position de force dans nos négociations pour attirer des investissements, créer des emplois au Canada. On a vu hier, il y a eu une annonce de la création d'une opportunité extraordinaire entre Airbus et LOT. LOT est une compagnie polonaise dans le domaine de l'aérospatial et LOT a commandé 40 appareils A220 qui vont être construits à Mirabel avec une option de 44 appareils de plus, donc environ 84 nouveaux appareils pour Mirabel. Bonne nouvelle pour nos travailleurs de l'aérospatiale à Mirabel. Alors, j'ai rencontré ici plus d'une douzaine de PDG dans le secteur de l'aérospatiale, d'un peu partout à travers le monde. Et j'ai été claire, le Canada est prêt à faire des affaires. Alors, moi, je suis maintenant prête à répondre à vos questions.
Merci. First question, Greg Quinn, please go ahead.
Hello. I was wondering if you had any discussions with European officials about buying fighter jets from Europe instead of all of the expensive F-35s we are ordering from the Americans.
Well, I've had conversations with Lockheed Martin, with Boeing. I've had conversations with Saab. I've met with many Canadian companies, CAE, Bombardier, all of them. And so right now, our goal is to make sure that we create jobs in the country. We are able to attract the most investments possible. And we want to make sure that we are working with reliable partners. For the rest, the negotiations and conversations are private. And we are working as a team within the cabinet and, of course, with the Prime Minister on this. But these conversations were really important.
Secondly, I recognize it's an aerospace conference, but since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, European nations have been trying to diversify their energy supplies, and Canada has been pitching itself as a global energy superpower. Have you learned anything new on your visit there about supply routes from Canada, and in particular, have you gotten any concerns expressed about Alberta's threats of calling a referendum on separating from Canada?
This was not brought up by the different CEOs. What was clear, though, is that thinking of the entire supply chain in aerospace, the conversation regarding critical minerals was also at the core of our different discussions. So what we can do to attract investments, to have access to reliable critical minerals across the country, including, of course, in Alberta, has been at the core of our discussion. We also talked about the investments in titanium, which is key, and it's an investment through also a facility of Rio Tinto in Quebec. And so that was also part of the conversation.
Next question, Kate McKenna.
I'm wondering, at a time when it's uncertain how much the U.S. will keep helping Ukraine, will Canada do more to fill in the gaps in aid?
We've said that we have the same position as the European countries do regarding our support to Ukraine. We think that not only does Ukraine need to be able to be at the table to take decision about its own future, but also we need to be there to support Ukraine, because the Ukrainians are fighting for their own freedom, but they're also fighting for ours. And so what you're seeing right now is geopolitics is having an impact on with whom we're doing business and what type of business. And of course, in the context of the defense procurement conversation, supporting Ukraine and having the same vision about how we can address the conflict is important. So I won't comment further on, Kate, what are the geopolitics of it, because of course, Minister of Foreign Affairs will be able to answer your questions. But what is interesting is how much the geopolitical landscape has changed over the past months, where now it is at the core of every single economic and financial decision, and it drives the conversations to be able to land deals with trusted partners.
Thank you so much. Just for my follow-up on the Golden Dome, Donald Trump says he's in talks with Carney on this, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister. Is Canada going to pay to join this proposed defense system? And is our participation in that tied in any way to possible tariff relief?
So we'll let the Prime Minister do his work. We've been always clear. We need to make sure that we have a security and trade partnership with US. So I think we should not negotiate in public. That's not how we've been dealing with the Trump administration. I think that there was a positive meeting that happened in Kananaskis. Meanwhile, on our side, here on the other side of the ocean, we've been making sure that companies understand that Canada is now investing 2% of its GDP quickly, and this is a floor, not a ceiling. So it is an opportunity for us to talk about how we can create jobs in Canada while we're investing in new technology and ultimately making very big investments, the largest since the Second World War. Of course, we need to protect our sovereignty. Of course, we need to look at what can be done on the satellite front. And these are active conversations with many countries, of course, along with the US.
Next question, Paul Vieira, please go ahead.
You hear?
Yeah, I can hear you, Paul. Go ahead.
Now that talks, I guess the aim now is for U.S. and Canada to reach a deal in the next 30 days or 29 days, however you count it. Should we take from that if there's no deal within 30 days, that Canada would be ready to respond with retaliation for the doubling of the aluminum and steel tariffs on Canada?
So, Paul, I know that lots of journalists want bits and pieces of the negotiation with the US, and clearly that's the aim of your question. And my answer will always be the same. We need to make sure that the Prime Minister is able to do his work and won't negotiate in public. Now, what I can tell you, though, is we will make sure that we are taking decisions in the best interest of Canada as a sovereign nation. And clearly, right now, these tariffs of 50% are not only illegal and justified, they're outrageous. And I've been in contact with many steel CEOs, although I'm on the other side of the ocean, because we need to protect our market, and we'll work on that.
Maybe then, as a follow-up, are you going to be bringing in anything? Are you going to be?
Sorry, Paul, we couldn't hear you well. What did you say at the beginning of the sentence?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you or are officials going to introduce measures that would address concerns about transshipment, i.e., the Chinese dumping of cheap steel and other metals into the Canadian market? Is this something that you or other officials are going to address in order to allay concerns from the Trump administration?
Well, I think that we will not tolerate unfair practices in the steel and aluminum sector or in any other sector, period. That's enough. We can't take it for granted. There can be no loopholes. It's not only the CEOs that are asking for these measures, it's also the labor movement and fundamentally people's jobs we're talking about. So we will make sure that we fight against the outrageous tariffs that have been imposed on our steel and aluminum workers. And at the same time, of course, we'll take measures to make sure that we protect our domestic market and we help companies deal with the crisis as we speak.
Last question from Laura Kane. Please go ahead.
Hi, Laura. Go ahead.
Sorry, Minister. Good morning. So on the steel industry, you have spoken about providing more liquidity to the steel companies. Can you provide any further details on that or an update on those conversations?
So short term, what we've been looking at is really helping to protect our market. Middle term, what we've been looking at is helping companies to have access to liquidities. And it's in a case-by-case basis. And the conversations with key companies in the steel sector have been quite positive. We have already an important program for large companies having liquidity issues. And we also have been working with our regional development agencies to make sure that we're in solution mode. And meanwhile, I think much more long term, what we're doing is we want to have a stronger domestic market. We want to increase the demand for Canadian steel and aluminum. So we're looking at the different investments that are being made by the Canadian government on the infrastructure front to make sure that there are Canadian steel and aluminum conditions in our major projects. We're looking also at having Canadian steel and aluminum supported through our defense procurement, and we're looking also at making sure that on the Canadian for Canadian steel and aluminum workers and industries, we're able to protect their jobs in the foreign direct investments we're attracting to Canada. So these decisions are being taken as we speak, and I'm convinced that this will help also create a greater demand within Canada and therefore protect jobs. As you can see, Laura, it's a short, middle, and long-term approach, but it's also being able to work on all the levers that the federal government have to make sure that we're protecting jobs.
Thank you. And then my follow-up is, you are the minister responsible for the steel, aluminum, and auto sectors, the industries that have been pummeled by US tariffs. As we work toward a trade deal within 30 days, should those industries be prepared to accept a 10% tariff, something similar to what the UK government achieved in their trade deal with the US?
So my point has been clear. These tariffs are unjustified. These tariffs are outrageous. These tariffs are illegal, and we'll continue to fight against them. They're a direct attack on our workers. They're a direct attack on our industries. And so in these circumstances, we think that we need to have free trade in the real sense of the term with the US. And that is why the Prime Minister is working on having a security and trade partnership with the US. There cannot be any form of unpredictability because that's hurting people, their livelihoods, and of course, just the overall investment climate, which is problematic. So meanwhile, while we're dealing with this trade war, the economy is the battlefield. Our front lines are the auto, the aluminum sectors, like you were mentioning. My job is also to create jobs, notwithstanding this uncertainty that is affecting all countries on earth, and attract investments. That's why I'm in Paris, and that's what I'm doing for the aerospace sector as we speak, which is at the core of the manufacturing sector in Canada, and these really important jobs we need to secure and grow.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci, c'est ce qui conclut cette conférence de presse.
Merci. Merci tout le monde.
Recording stopped.